What's up? It's Chris, the Drone Geek, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Drones. If you've been following me on Instagram or YouTube, then you know recently my girlfriend Katie and I took a 10-day trip to the state of Alaska. We went as far north as Talkeetna and as far south as Homer, and we had the time of our lives, seeing as much as we could between those 2 points in the state. It was absolutely awesome. We did a lot of hiking, we boondocked, we saw a lot of wildlife. It was a really great trip. And coincidentally, it's also where I got this dope-ass hat. It says Alaskan Bush Pilot on it, and it's called oiled cloth. That's what the hat's made out of. So it's got like a leathery feel. Anyway, it's a really cool feeling and looking hat. And yeah, you know what? I flew my drone up there, so I'm not a bush pilot, but yeah, I feel like I flew up there, so like I can wear the tourist hat at the very least, right? Alaska is absolutely gorgeous. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life, and that's not an exaggeration. I would say it's in the top 2 places, if not the number 1 spot. The only competition I'd really give it is Utah, but even there, it is a very, very tight race for the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life when it comes to an area or location in the world. So if you're a drone pilot, I especially recommend that you make time to visit Alaska and fly your drone there if possible. It is great for aerial photography and video. I actually have a highlight reel that will be coming out next week here on my YouTube channel that just sort of gives you an idea of all of the different things Katie and I saw while we were making our way through the state of Alaska. It's going to be awesome, and I really, really hope you like it. However, it is not cut and dry when it comes to going to Alaska to fly your drone. It's not as simple as just going there, launching your drone, and getting what you need while you're in the air. There are a lot of protected areas as well as controlled and sometimes restricted airspaces in that state. So it's going to be super important that you do your homework ahead of time and understand what you're getting yourself into before you just pull the trigger, schedule the trip, and go to fly your drone, because you could be greatly disappointed if you do it in that fashion. Now, I'm not necessarily going to get into the particulars when it comes to controlled and restricted airspaces. If you're a drone pilot, you should have taken the trust. You maybe took the Part 107. You should be aware of what airspaces you're able to navigate and how you're supposed to get permission and authorization to fly in certain controlled airspaces. This video is not going to get into that, because at this point, if you're watching this and you're seriously considering a trip to Alaska to fly your drone, you should know most of that information. But I am here to help you specifically with getting permits and authorization to operate your drone in certain areas in the state of Alaska. I went through the rigors of getting the permits and authorizations that I needed. It is not an easy process per se. It is also a little bit costly. So if you are not prepared to put some money behind your trip and you don't like doing proactive research on where you're flying, how you're allowed to fly, and what you're allowed to fly around, you're going to want to maybe reconsider even going to Alaska for the purpose of flying a drone. But if you're not afraid of a little bit of homework up front, I promise you the payoff is absolutely fantastic. Stick with me here, because we're going to go through how you can apply for a permit to operate your drone in certain areas of the state of Alaska, as well as registering for a day use permit in other areas of the state. So just hang with me, and I'm going to have all of the links and information that I go over in the description below. First things first, I do want to just briefly touch on airspace and how it's going to impact where you fly. A lot of people think that when they're going to go to Alaska and fly a drone, that they're going to be able to launch in Anchorage, get some good city shots, and then take it out into the wilderness and fly everywhere else. I need you to keep in mind that the infrastructure related to roadways in Alaska is somewhat simplistic. It's very basic. There's not a lot of options for roadways in Alaska. Therefore, people that live there or visit there regularly depend upon chartered planes and helicopters to get around the state. It's just the nature of the landscape. There are a lot of protected areas, and the roads are somewhat underdeveloped for as long as Alaska's been around. So that being said, you can probably guesstimate that there's a lot of controlled airspace in Alaska. Every sizable town and village in Alaska has at least an airfield, an airstrip, or even an airport, small to large, somewhere nearby. So you're going to have to take that into account when you're planning your flights throughout your trip to Alaska. But thanks to systems like Lanc through Aloft and other apps that allow you to get authorization in controlled airspace, it's not too difficult to get the right authorizations in the right areas. The only place that I would absolutely rule out that I visited was Anchorage. There were maybe just a few pockets in the area of Anchorage that you could have flown your drone, and at best you can get it at about 200 feet. So it really limits your flexibility in your shots because you're not able to go super high. And honestly, the airspace geo fences and geo zones around those pockets are pretty tight. So you're not going to be able to travel very far, forward, backward, left, and right. So keep that in mind. I would really just save your time, save your battery, save your energy, and just don't waste anything in Anchorage. It's a really nice little city, but in terms of aerial photography, there's no skyscrapers. There's really no neat features to speak of other than maybe like the downtown section. And if you still don't believe me, go ahead and take a look at the geofence map that I found on Aloft for the Anchorage area. Intense, right? Yeah. Don't waste your time. Just trust me. Anchorage is cool, but it's better seen on foot rather than through your drone. Next, let's talk about the difference between requesting permission to operate your drone in any given area versus getting authorization to navigate a certain airspace. So when it comes to getting authorization to navigate airspace, that's done through the FAA through their Lanc system. So keep that in mind. The FAA is the only entity in the United States that can tell you what airspace you are and are not allowed to navigate with your UAV. Nobody else can tell you what you can and can't do when it comes to airspace. The FAA is the judge, jury, and sometimes the executioner. So you're going to want to go through apps like Aloft and other services that allow you to get Lanc authorization in controlled airspace because that goes directly through the FAA's approved system. When it comes to getting permission to operate your drone, that's a completely different ballgame. So nobody can tell you how to fly your drone besides the FAA. However, people and organizations and entities can tell you where you're allowed to operate your drone from, because basically what they can say is you're not allowed to be on my property or within my jurisdiction and operate your UAV. That includes launching, landing, and flying. They can't tell you once the UAV's in the air where that UAV can go and where it can't go and how it flies, but they can certainly tell you that you're not allowed to stand there, launch, land, or operate your drone from their jurisdiction or from their property. So that's what we're talking about here with the permitting process. Not getting permission to fly per se, but getting permission to operate my drone from those specific areas. Now that we've got that completely cleared up, Chugach State Park is the only state park in Alaska that expressly prohibits the use and operation of UAVs in its jurisdiction. There are no other state parks that I've found in Alaska that expressly say something about the operation of drones or UAVs. And even in my conversation with the folks from the Division of Parks and Outdoor Recreation in the state of Alaska, they said that there are no other state parks in the state that expressly prohibit the use of drones. It is only Chugach State Park. So this is really the state park that you're going to want to get this permit for, because first off, if you haven't seen pictures of Chugach State Park, it is gorgeous. The mountains are beautiful. There are great lakes in there. We saw Eklutna Lake and it was absolutely beautiful, especially after we did a hike that took us up, I think 3,900 feet. We got to see it from that high up and it was just absolutely gorgeous. So Chugach State Park is definitely worth the effort and the money of applying for this permit. But it also shows the people that are in charge of the state park system, as well as the state land of Alaska, that you're taking the right avenues to get permission to fly legally and within their rules. So it really works twofold. You're getting the express permission to fly in Chugach, but you're also showing them that you have nothing to hide and you're not trying to cause any trouble while you're flying your drone. So I highly recommend you go through this process, especially if you plan on flying in Chugach State Park. Not to be confused with Chugach National Forest, which expressly prohibits the operation of drones anywhere in their forest system. So keep that in mind. You can't get a permit to fly in Chugach National Forest, which is different than Chugach State Park, which is what we're going to be talking about when it comes to applying for a permit. Now, Without further ado, let's get into the step-by-step protocol you're going to need to take to put yourself in the best position for success when it comes to applying for a permit to fly in Chugach State Park. Number 1. Email parkpermitting@alaska.gov to let them know you are interested in obtaining a commercial use permit to fly your drone in the Alaska State Park system. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. Just be professional, just word your email appropriately, and make sure that you present yourself in the best possible light, expressing your interest in getting hooked up with a permit for commercial use in the state park system of Alaska. Number 2. While you're waiting for a return email with your requested application for a permit, go to commerce.alaska.gov/web/cbpl/businesslicensing.aspx to begin the process of acquiring a business license. This is going to cost you around $50, and in order to file an application for a permit for commercial use to fly your UAV in Chugach State Park, you are going to be required to have an Alaska business license. This just costs you $50 one time, and you don't need to renew it after you're done with it, but they are going to require that you have a business license number with the state of Alaska. Number 3, you will also need a liability insurance policy at minimum to obtain your permit. Now, I went with Skywatch because I've always liked Skywatch. I have a relationship with Skywatch, and honestly, their policies are super flexible, and you can cancel pretty much anytime with no penalty. Not to mention, I did have to cash in on my policy, unfortunately, while I was in Alaska because I crashed the Mavic 2 Pro, and they processed it within 3 days. I'm not kidding. I just presented the information I had. I didn't have flight logs. They usually need them, but I did have a clip of my drone wrecking. I gave them an outline of what happened. I showed them on a map what happened. And once I satisfied what they needed, which wasn't very much, to be honest with you, they went ahead and just processed my claim, and I got a payout within 3 days of filing my claim. It was super helpful, and it made that whole process of losing my drone just a lot less painful, so I highly, highly recommend Skywatch. This video is not sponsored, by the way. The one caveat with your insurance plan for flying in the state of Alaska is you do need to include the State Department of the State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources on the policy. That is required, so make sure you include them in on the policy. Skywatch, again, makes it super easy just to add them really quick, and as long as they're listed on it, you're not going to have any issues when it comes to the insurance portion of this application. Once you receive your permit application, it's time to fill it out. Now, it can be difficult to discern what information and itinerary you need to provide them on the application and how best to word it. Just do your best. I found that the folks over at the State of Alaska Department of Parks and Outdoor Recreation were super easy to work with, very understandable, and really laid back for the most part. Shout out to Ben and Pamela. You guys are absolutely awesome. They helped me so much through the application process, and were super understanding of the fact that this was my first time doing this and I had no idea what I was doing. So they were very informative, and if it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't be able to do this video because they educated me about the process along the way. So it made it a lot easier to put together this video for you. Again, shout out to Pamela and Ben. You guys rock. Number 5, along with the actual permit, there are some things I recommend and will likely be required for you to attach to it. These items include an official business license from the state of Alaska. This is required. A certificate of insurance for your drones with the State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources on the policy as well. This is required. Your personal and pilot identification cards. This is just recommended. Proof of recurrent knowledge for the Part 107 UAV operations test. This is also recommended. Proof of completion of the trust. This is recommended. A UAV inventory and identification sheet. This is optional. A catalog of FAA registration cards for your UAV flight. This is recommended. A map with outlines of intended drone operations. This is required. A map outlining restricted airspace geozones over the state of Alaska. This is optional. And finally, a planned itinerary and travel map for your crew. This is recommended. Now, I know this seems like a lot, but just trust me when I say the best way to go when filing for this application is honesty, transparency, and thoroughness. If you're all three of those things with the folks over at the Division of Parks and Outdoor Recreation for the state of Alaska, you will not have any problems communicating with them and developing a rapport that will make it very, very easy to complete the application process. Just make sure you do your homework, you have all of your ducks in a row, and the more information you provide them about your intended operation, the better. Do not leave them in the dark, do not seem shady or facetious, just make sure that you're giving them everything they ask for and a little bit more. It doesn't hurt. Number 6, after your application has been approved by the state park superintendents, the application is sent to all of the state parks you identify as possible shooting locations. You will then be instructed to call the office of the Division of Parks and Outdoor Recreation to process payment. Now, you can pay over the phone via credit card or mail in a check. Obviously, I recommend that you pay over the phone via credit card because it's going to get you to your permit much faster. You're not going to have to wait for the mail to process your check, get it to them, and then them to process the payment and get your permit to you. It's really instantaneous. They're going to have the money immediately, which means they can process your permit almost immediately after that. Also, this is sort of the pain point when it comes to this process. Keep in mind, this is not cheap for somebody that is doing a leisure or small project. It's $100 just to file the application, and then it's an additional $125 per crew member per day. So there were 2 people in my crew. It was myself and Katie. So that's $125 for each of us per day. We shot 1 day in Chugach State Park. So my grand total when it came to just the permit was the $100 processing fee plus $250 for my crew for the day. So that's $350 just for this permit to fly in Chugach State Park. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it is necessary to fly in Chugach. And if you're gonna be in that area, which it's a pretty large area to be honest with you, you're gonna wanna make sure you're flying by the book, because I was approached one time about my permit, and even though it's just once, it happened once. And if I wasn't by the book, I would have been in a lot of trouble. That permit saved me. I presented it to the ranger that stopped me. They gave it back to me, let me go about my business, and just walked away. That was good enough for them. So remember, with that in mind, that I did get stopped once, you are going to want to have your permit, including all of the attachments that you sent in with it, on your person when you are flying your drone. Because if you don't have it and you did apply for it, I don't know what you're in store for if you got approved, but you're just not carrying it on you. That could cause a problem for you. It may not be getting the book thrown at you, but it will certainly stop your flight operations for at least as much time as it takes them to verify the fact that you do have a permit, just not on you. So keep in mind, it's just much easier to have that permit with all of the materials you included with it on your person while you're flying. One other avenue that Pamela sent me down and helped me with was applying for a commercial and recreation day use permit for the state of Alaska. You can apply for that at https://dnr.alaska.gov/MLW/lands/commercial-recreation-use-registration. And it basically gives you the right of way to fly anywhere you want within the jurisdiction of the state of Alaska. Now, obviously there are exceptions. There are protected zones, and those are outlined when you go through and apply for that registration permit. Keep in mind, it can be a little bit tricky when it comes to differentiating the various zones in the state of Alaska. They're broken up into numbered and lettered zones. You're gonna have to identify those when you apply for this registration day use permit. But it's really, after you get that down, pretty easy, and it only costs you $80. Now, I promise, I know that $80 isn't chump change. I said only, but compared to everything else we've already purchased, it's not that bad. But I promise this $80 is the last bit of money you will spend relating to the permitting and application process for the state of Alaska. You will not spend any more money. This is it. I promise you. And what's nice about this particular day use permission or permit is that it's a one-time fee. You just have to let them know what your date range is going to be, how long you're going to be in those areas, and there's really no cap on how often or how much you can fly in those areas. You're good to go when it comes to Alaskan state uplands, lowlands, shorelands, fresh bodies of water, you name it. If it's state controlled, this is going to allow you to fly your drone there much easier. And by the way, I know that I've thrown a lot of very long links at you. I'm going to include all of them down in the description below of this video. So just make sure that you watch this video, learn what you need to do with those links, and then use those links to get exactly where you're going as efficiently as possible. All in all, between the business license, the permit for Chugach State Park, and the day use permit for the state lands of Alaska, I paid $480. I know that's not chump change, and I don't even really have the financial breathing room to invest that kind of money in a trip like this. But I thought this is probably going to be one of the few times, if not the only time, I ever visit Alaska, so I really wanted to get the most out of it without causing any trouble for myself, for Katie, or anybody else involved with Drone Geek Productions. So I made sure that I dotted my T's and crossed my I's and had all of my ducks in a row before I went and flew my drone, and it paid off because it made the whole experience just so much more relaxing. There's nothing worse than flying in a new area and not being 100% sure of the rules for operation in that area and constantly looking over your shoulder trying to figure out if this is okay. Are people watching you? Are they judging you? I had no thoughts about whether or not I was allowed to fly somewhere because I knew I was good, I had the documentation, and that I was not going to have any issues when it came to flying where I knew I was allowed to fly and where I was permitted to fly. I hope that this information was useful to you. Keep in mind, this video was recorded in September of 2021, so the rules could have changed, especially if this video is a few years old at the time that you're watching it. So always do your homework, always do your research. Don't use this as the end-all be-all for applying for a drone permit in Alaska. It's very likely that this information is now outdated if this video has aged at all since the time you've watched it. So just keep that in mind. Do your homework, be thorough, and make sure that you're following the rules. But if this is information that's still very relevant and you follow my step-by-step instructions for how the process goes and what you need to do to put yourself in the position for success when it comes to getting a permit to fly in Chugach State Park and the state of Alaska in general, you will have almost no problems, I guarantee you. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up button down below. It helps me out a lot to get this information out to more people. And if you really like this video and you love drone content, whether it's highlight reels, history lessons through the lens of a drone, how-to videos with your drone, or just rumors and updates from the drone industry, this is the channel for you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. You're gonna get all of my latest videos on what's going on in the world of drones, all of the things I do with my drones, and so much more. I promise if you are a drone lover, you're gonna love my channel. So hit that subscribe button, and until next time, I'm Chris, the Drone Geek, and I am out of here.